No,
There's balls.
I know, but I'll take what you've got afterwards, and I'll do it. No, I haven't streamed it live like that before. I've done recordings and stuff on it more.
All right, hey guys. So good evening, and this is the Get Busy Livin Podcast, and we have a special guest tonight, the lovely Anna Charles, and I'm Dr. Scott from Sixth Sense Acupuncture and the Healthy Habits Club. We thank you so much, Anna, for your time this evening. We appreciate you sacrificing your. Where are you, in Switzerland?
I'm in Switzerland, yeah. So it's the morning for me. It's delighted to be here.
You were saying before that it's raining there at the moment, but it was a beautiful day here in Brisbane. So we'll try and brighten your day up for you, Anna.
Splendid. I always love talking to you, Dr. Scott. So it's already going well.
So thank you. So I'll kick off the show with my usual first question. So tell us, Anna, what gets you out of bed every morning?
While it might sound a bit trite, but opportunity, right? You never know what's going to come your way. I'm actually a morning person, which helps. You know, I'm going to be up early because I'll be falling asleep mid evening. I'm not one for rolling around in bed never was. I have so many projects on the go. I have a couple of really long-term projects as well. I know the ones that you have to nibble away at. So if I wake up early, I get to my desk and these are writing projects. So I do some writing with my cup of tea before anybody else is up. So I guess that's how I get started.
Yeah. Okay. And so is there a certain amount of words that you try to write every day, or?
Wow, that's a good question, because one of these. So one is a book on my work I'm doing around alcohol moderation, and the other is a completely private. It's a historical novel, and that second one actually I'm trying out this thing where I'm going to be releasing chunks of a time on Substack. I like Substack as the writer's platform, and so that means 500 words a week for that. So it's not very much. But it's amazing how much 500 words can seem when you're like, ah. So I just try to get into the rhythm. And I think if you just show up and it doesn't matter what you write, and then you show up and it doesn't matter what you write, that actually you then do create quite quickly a body of work from what seems, when you're starting with that blank page, it can feel, so it's more showing up consistently. That's my key.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. It's all healthy habits.
Exactly.
So it's all about habit. So you're exactly right. So if that is something that I'm just about to do a joint venture in a book myself. So I'm in the same boat. I have to try and do a couple of hundred words a day, and that's what I'm trying to aim for.
Yeah.
So when it's complete, then I don't have to rush. Otherwise, it's like the old exams, the assignments you get going to uni. I was terrible for it. I always had the last day, and I'm trying to cram in a couple of thousand words.
Yeah.
To try and to get it in before the time was cut out. So that's very, very interesting. I know that you do that. So tell us why you're writing so many words. You said you're alluding to your books. Is there any other reason?
Yeah. Well, so I've always, separate from what I do as a job, I've always loved words, and I actually published my first novel. When was it? That 4 years ago. That took me 9 years to write, which was obviously not. I was very inconsistent there. So this historical one I'm working on is really just a passion project. Don't want to talk about it too much because it's really early, but the one to do with alcohol, because it's part of wanting to get the message out to people. So obviously I do coaching, and I just wanted to, there's so many people in the world even if everybody who was an ideal client for me wanted to work with me, I wouldn't be able to. So I figure if I can condense what I do down into a book, so I already have a podcast, and I think lots of people also like to, there's all these different mediums, right, that we like to take in knowledge on. So I think I'm gonna write a book. And that's the challenge, right? How do you make it simple and easy and clear and concise, when you can sort of talk all day long, use all the words, but then getting it onto paper? And I just think it will be a help. I mean, if it helps one person out there to think, I think I can do this. I've struggled with this, but I think I can do this. And then that propels them to take action, then my work is done, quite frankly. And it's always a kick also personally to get another book out. So
you've sort of led me into the second question. So you are a coach in there's a stop over drinking coach. So you're a stop over drinking coach. So that's very interesting. So tell us a bit. How did you get into that? How did you get into?
Yeah, I mean, that was never on the cards, when I was writing my plan. Well, for years and years and years, I was in corporate, right? I was a very, very traditional, went to university, got my degree, got a job, and I was promoted through the ranks in tech. I actually used to run large organizations to do with internationalizing products. I had hundreds of people working for me. At one point, I had a responsibility for a $60 million P&L. So, it was quite a responsible job. And I was very used to, just like we talked about with the writing, right? Setting a goal and achieving it, setting a goal and achieving it. And one day I realized I was probably drinking a bit too much. Now, I wasn't drinking at 9 a.m. I wasn't blacking out every night. It was nothing as, amazing, magnifying as that. It was really just pretty much every day, 2 to 3, maybe 4 glasses of white wine. And it was kind of creeping up slowly, so much so that I didn't really notice it. It was just part of my routine. It was what I did, right? And I remember this one day, as I used to drink and cook. That was kind of like the big thing for me. It was kind of like a treat. I come home from work. I love cooking. I used to love drinking. And I was looking at the countertop there. I mean, this was lots of healthy ingredients. I had my onions and my potatoes and things. But next to the onions was a full glass of wine, right? Just fresh glass of wine. And I noticed it, which was like, where did that come from? I mean, this sounds bizarre, but this was my life. Where did that come from? I thought, who poured that? Right? My husband wasn't home. I actually went out and checked in the apartment. He wasn't home. And it struck me that I had done that. So as part of my routine of going to the fridge and getting all the ingredients, lay them out, and I would chop them all and everything, I had poured wine. And that was like, so is this now a habit? We talk about habits. This was clearly now part of my habitual routine of cooking and drinking. I didn't like that. I didn't like that had snuck up on me. I was judging myself a bit for it, granted, but I didn't like that I wasn't aware. So I thought, I'm just going to cut back, right? I can do that. It was really hard. That was the shocker. It was actually really, 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 really hard to say, well, I'm not going to drink tonight, or I'm just going to have the one. And no, I'm tired, or I'm stressed, or I want a reward, or this seems miserable. All these excuses would come flooding through. And I actually found I couldn't do it easily, which, again, for somebody who sees myself as very competent, was scary. And so I decided I needed to put a stop to it. I mean, this is not working out for me. I knew that AA wasn't for me. And there was the advice on the internet was basically just stop. Just like, okay. And I didn't want to go sober. I didn't really see the need for that. I just needed to cut it back. So I figured it out. I had been involved a little bit in the edges of coaching for other things, and I used a lot of those techniques. It worked. And I basically said, I've got to share this. This feels like a miracle to this day. I mean, this is 4 years later, still feels like a miracle. that I was able to do that, because it was such a struggle. I mean, it sounds so silly. If you're not in the struggle, you will find it hard to understand. But if you're in the struggle, you completely get it. And I said, I just want to share this. So I quit the corporate life. I became a coach, teaching. And I said, again, I took everything I know and I sort of chunked it down into this simplify, because it is actually very simple, this simple way of doing it. And that's what I do. That's how I became a coach.
So yeah, that's usually how it works. Yeah, it's that's why I got thrown into Chinese medicine, because of the understanding of well, the lack of understanding, I should say,
Right.
of our health and basically how our healthcare system works.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's usually that's what happens is tragedy or adversity forces us to take a stand and let's try and figure this out another way.
Yeah.
So okay, and so tell us about your corporate life before. So we'll just back it up a little bit, and before you drop the bottle and figure that you needed to make a change. So tell us about your executive life. What were you doing?
Yeah, it's actually, and that's a good. Yeah, it's a good question, because it kind of contributed to the habit in ways. So I was, for many years, I was the director, and I was a vice president, and I ran a variety of organizations. Firstly, it was all against and around the internationalization of products. So when you have a product that's written in English, you then have to sell it in, well, if you choose to sell it in all the different geos, it needs to get localized. So I was responsible for the team that did that. And it's far more than just translation. It also involves just internationalizing the English to start with. So I did that. And then I ran services groups as well. So I was responsible for the training, the product support, and then the consulting that went around a software product. Now, a large part of that, but a significant portion of that involved working with our reseller partners. These are the people who sold our software product. And it meant going to conventions and conferences, also with customers. So we'd have these mammoth, thousands of people conferences. And part of it was obviously you were presenting and you were schmoozing a little bit. You were making the resellers and the customers have a good time. And guess what? A lot of the conferences were in Las Vegas. And guess what? A lot of it was around the bar. That was really part of it. And it was kind of an unspoken rule that you didn't leave the bar before the people you were with, right? Before the clients you were with, or the resellers you were with. So there was that angle to it. It was, again, it wasn't written down, but there was kind of some normalization of it there. And that was obviously where all the socialization happened. If you were the one, there was judgment for sure. If you were the one who snuck off to bed, at 11:30, it's like, oh, lightweight. Lightweight can't handle this. And so it became, drinking was really a very big part of that. So that was the first piece. The other thing I would say is I'm actually by nature quite a shy person. I don't like, it's not my first choice. I've learned to use different languages. It's not my first choice to be with hundreds of people, even dozens of people I don't know. The idea of making small talk is excruciating, right? It's just, what am I going to say? And what are they going to think? And that whole thing. And I learned again very quickly that a couple of glasses of wine would make it all seem less painful. Again, it wasn't to get drunk. It was just, okay, I'm a bit looser. I feel a bit looser. I can talk. I'm a bit chattier. Because I'm quite a lively person with people I know, but not with strangers. So that would help. And again, this was all to feel better in the job. And then that became just something that I thought, okay, that works. So the couple of glasses of wine, that's a good strategy. That's what my brain learned. That's a good strategy. So we're going to do that. So the next time you go into it, again, this is habits forming, right? The next time we're in this scenario, we don't like how this feels, and we remember, okay, that's what we do. That's how we solve the situation, without realizing that actually feeling a bit anxious was not a problem. It's not. Probably many people are feeling that too. Anyway, so that was all. That all became part of it. And so it was never because it was highly stressed. I mean, I enjoyed what I did, but it was all part of the bricks and mortar of leading that life. White wine, which was always white wine for me, became an integral piece of it until I didn't realize that actually it was.
I understand. And so, I understand what you're saying, because the people above you as well, they're doing the same thing. They're in the same boat. And they've been taught by their previous teachers as well, and leaders. Yeah, I get it. It's there's an ad here in Australia, and it's a commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a picture. It's a video of this young lad, and his father says, can you go to the fridge and get me a beer?" And of course he runs off, and he gets the beer out of the fridge, and he comes back, and then the young boy, he becomes the father, and then he's saying to his son,
"Yeah,
can you go off and get a beer?" And you can see the resemblance. See what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And it's behavior learned. So that and especially here in Australia, we don't mind a drink here in Australia. Apparently, we do. And there's a lot of families that would say that you ask us, most Australians, they'll say, we were drinking pretty early. It was usually high school or late teens. We started drinking.
Yeah.
Like even now, it's just as bad as it was when I was a kid. You still talk to teenagers in their early teens. They're drinking. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting. So I work with people all around the world, and I will say almost to a person, they all say something similar. Where I come from, it's just rife. The Brits, nobody has a drinking culture like the British. And it's like, okay, I work with people, in the West Coast of America, and they say that everyone around them is someone who's semi-retired. Everyone around them is drinking, from mid-morning. So it's just it's a socialized thing. Doesn't make it right, but it is. And I think if we accept that, and then we say, how do we play into that, and how we can interrupt that and change that, that's where our power lies. Because there's reports that Gen Z, I think it's the new generation, isn't it, that they're not drinking so much. There was an article the other day that the sales of Guinness Zero are soaring, driven by the youngsters. But I don't know. I look around and I don't see much difference from when I was young. So
no, I don't either. It's still yeah. I don't know how you stop that. It's it's parents basically teaching their kids what they were taught. And
but yeah.
Oh, it's the same for me. I remember when I was 8, 9, or 10. I think it was. I would have been around about 10 anyway. And I remember we went on holidays, and Dad would go into the pub, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. Dad would go into the pub, and Mum and I would sit outside, and she'd have a shandy.
Mm-hmm.
Shandy is half beer, half lemonade.
Yeah, we have shandy. Yeah.
And she'd say to me, "Do you want to try a shandy?" I said, "Yeah, okay." And I thought it was just like lemonade. It just tasted like lemonade to me, with a little bit of a weird taste to it, but it wasn't much. It was mainly lemonade.
Yeah.
And all it did was just make me hyperactive. That's all it really did. So, but that's that was the way it was. It was, and it hasn't changed. It's still the same.
Nope.
Same for the next generation, and of course, and then the next generation.
Yeah, I didn't actually come. My parents is rarely drank. I mean, I didn't come from that at all. I mean, there was, I remember they're sitting outside the pub while they might have a drink on a Sunday lunch, but not really. Where I have seen it growing, though, because I'm obviously very aware of this, is it is in all parts of society, right? So my favorite thing is to say, try and find, especially for women, a greetings card for a birthday that does not have a glass of wine on it, or champagne. It's nigh on impossible. And so that's the first thing. And then I used to get so triggered. It's so funny. So there's a soap opera I used to watch, I still watch, called EastEnders, right? It's on every couple of nights or something. And I would be triggered by if they were in the bar having a glass of wine. I thought, that's a good idea. And until that point, I hadn't thought of it. So I'd be pouring the wine while I'm watching the program because they're in the pub, doing the drinking. And I think, again, I think this is maybe over time, this could change. We see the reaction to things like cigarettes has changed and all the rest of it. But I always say to people, again, don't expect any change anytime soon. And if it does, great. If it doesn't, that's the environment we're living in. These are just the beliefs that society has, that people have, that we see all around us, that we have bought into. Yeah. So just accept that. And then based on that, you can still decide what you want for yourself. You can still decide the habit you want to create. But and it's powerful when you do that and say, hey, look, I can do this, even though all of my friends are drinking, even though, I've gone into bars with my husband and he's ordered maybe an alcohol-free beer, and the waiter has not believed that that's what he wants and has brought him a beer.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so
that's good. So you come to the bar, you come to the bar to buy. I can understand. I see. I get it. I understand that. It's the same here. There's no different. They look at you funny, like, you want what? You want light beer?
What is it?
Light beer?
You want? Yeah.
Why buy a beer?
And I love to drink. My favorite drink is sparkling water in a wine glass. And there's a reason for this. This is not because I want to pretend it's wine, as some people would say. It's just, I really don't like drinking out of those, because they'll bring you a tumbler, like these heavy tumblers like the kids have, great thick thing. So I don't want to be drinking in an elegant restaurant in this thing. But it's quite interesting. It becomes a bit of a farce. I said, like, water and a white wine. So you want some wine? No, I'd like the wine. Okay. And so then they'll bring a wine glass, and then if my colleagues are having wine, then they'll pour wine in. I mean, the whole thing, it's very difficult for people to understand water, in a wine glass. And they'll top up. I'm often topped up with wine. But you laugh it off. I just laugh it off and say, okay, no, that's not what I want. Can I have this again, please?
Yes.
It's fine.
Yeah, because it's like it's very similar to food. Food is no different. You'll order the steak and I always order steak and salad. If there's nothing else, it's very difficult to find a restaurants that don't sell crap food.
Right.
So, but you can't, if you go to a pub or something like that, they usually have the steak and salad, but they usually have chips with it. See, they always put chips with it. So I don't eat chips. So it's no different. It's the same thing. You say to them, oh, can I just have salad instead of chips? Oh, would you like to replace the chips with another salad? I said, yeah, that's fine. If you could do that, and what do they bring out? Steak, salad, and chips. It's like, who was I talking to? Was I talking to someone else?
I love actually to hear that you say that, Dr. Scott, because when I'm in a play, one of my go-tos is, because I don't like chips. Actually, I like the idea of chips, and I like 2 or 3. And if they're there because of of course, the nature of I would eat more than I want. So I just tend to just not order it. And so my go-to is steak and salad. So I feel really good that that's what you say as well. But it's true. You often get, or onion rings. I'll have them. They said we put some onion rings on just in case. Okay.
Yeah. It was, I went to a dear friend of mine's, his son's wedding recently. And they were, it was a open bar, so you could get what you wanted. And they were putting a bottle of vodka on each table. And anyway, they'd come around and I ordered water. I just ordered water. I wasn't drinking. I don't drink, so. And they came up and she's pouring me a beer, and I said, "Oh, I don't drink beer. It's okay. I've got a glass of water there anyway." And she must have forgot, because she came back 30 minutes later. And of course, someone's taken the beer away, and then she's bought me another one. I'm like, oh, okay. It's the way it is.
It is the way it is. But actually, what you just said, that's interesting and useful for people who might think, because one of the big challenges is I'm out socially and someone brings me a beer, like the waitress brings me a beer or my friend buys me a beer. What do I do? Right? I don't want it. And they're not maybe feeling brave enough to say I'm not, because you get, right, it's the floodgates of questions. Let's just leave it there. And actually somebody will drink it at some point. This is not going to go to waste. Someone will cotton on that it's not being drunk. So in your case of your first beer.
Yeah, someone will come and pick it up. They'll pick it up and drink it. Someone will either come and pick it up and drink it, or they'll just take it away and just throw it. One of the two. Then they refilled it anyway.
Exactly. It is crazy.
You can't help but just laugh. It's just like, oh well, that's the way it is.
Exactly. That is the way it is. And again, I think there's huge power in that, because if that's what you expect, you're not going to be shocked or frightened, scared, annoyed, irritated, any of those things by it. So you're not going to then go and do something that you would not be happy with. It's okay, yeah. And if it doesn't happen, it's a bonus. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and they were pouring vodka as well for us, and yeah. So that they're coming around, with soft drinks to cover up the taste, and same again. I just leave it sit there, and sure enough, someone will come along and take it and drink it, and so yeah, it's no big deal. It's just it's the way it is. It's just like the fish, the steak and chips. You just got to leave the chips. You just got to have the willpower to say, no, I don't want it.
Exactly.
I don't need it.
Exactly.
And it's just gonna have to stay there. If someone takes it away, they take it away.
And I think, it was hard to start with, but I say to people, and sort of enjoy the fact that you're bucking the trend here a little bit. You are going to be the odd one out, but you can think of odd one out in a bad way, or you can see it as, hey, that's me. I'm just doing this for me, and this is what I want. And that kind of makes us feel better about it than that we're not fitting in. Like you say, if you always expect steak and chips, you're not going to be upset if it's steak and chips, and it's not going to waver you from what you want, right? You're not going to have those chips that, oh, right, that's it. I'm going to just have to eat these, right? Yeah. And I don't want to, but that's what we do with drink. I didn't want the drink, but she bought me the drink. I'm just going to have to drink the drink. And I said, no, there's no kind of,
so it's just having the willpower. Look, if we talked about this like last year, even if we talked about that, I would have eaten it. I would have eaten the chips. I would have drank the beer. I would have been just like everyone else. But then when I realized that, I want to start looking after myself, I don't want to be the physician that kept doing the opposite to what he was saying, and then have a heart attack or a stroke and then say, I probably should have changed my ways earlier.
Yeah.
And because I'm seeing people now that I'm trying to tell them that if they don't change their ways, they'll end up with some sort of chronic disease.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I get it, well, it's hypocritical. But if I, stop doing that, doing that behavior, then it's going to minimize my risk.
Yeah.
Because this is the hardest thing for physicians. Is I can understand why doctors get hooked on and nurses get hooked on medication because it's in their face every day, all day.
Mm-hmm.
They have access. So, and I've working in the hospital system, I saw it happen a lot.
Right.
They get hooked on it. They get hooked on whatever they're taking, and it ruins their careers and their families. And when they get to their 50s and 60s, they start having heart attacks and strokes, and then they're on a culmination of medication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're the ones handing them out to the patients, and they're the ones taking them themselves.
Yeah, I'd never thought. I mean, I can only imagine that must. I mean, the layers of judgment that there must be on themselves. Then, for how did I? I mean, I know all this stuff, right? Intellectually, they know all this, and it's what they're saying each day, and yet they're the ones also doing that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting what you said when you said last year. If this, you'd have done it, but then you decided you didn't want to. And I think again, this is where I think the power of our mind. I mean, of course, there are physical dependencies on certain substances that that's not my territory, and that's very clearly medical, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. But I think so much we can do with our mind if we just say, look, I really don't want this for whatever reasons. And the way you spoke there was a very clear and compelling reason. You could, that's the driver. That's what we need really to start with, because it's all about the drama in our mind and what we are missing out on. Like if you're looking at the steak, if you're sitting there thinking those chips are just the most delicious thing, and I am really missing out, this salad is going to be a pale imitation of the experience I could have, then guess what? You're going to really not like the salad as much. You might eat it, but it's like, and before long you'll be back on the chips. Whereas if you can sort of embrace what you're going towards, you not find that's part of it. It's not what you're losing out from, it's what you get gaining.
Well, when you start to realize how much carbohydrates you're eating each day, and if you do if you're really serious, you do a diary of what you're eating.
Yeah.
There's other names they call it, but it's basically a diary of what you're eating every day, and you figure out how much carbohydrates and how much sugar is in the equal to.
Yeah.
In what you're eating per day, you go, I don't want to eat that anymore. And you look at it over time, you start to realize, that's just a bowl of sugar. I might as well just eat 10 teaspoons of sugar. That's what I think to myself. I just think, it's sweet poison.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it tastes great. Don't get me wrong, it tastes great. There's a reason why it tastes great.
So I love so I probably shouldn't use that language, but I really, really like chocolate covered biscuits. You have the McVitie's biscuits. And I know for a fact, if you put a packet next to me, I could go through, I mean, goodness knows, I probably wouldn't even know how many I could go. It was just sitting there with a cup of tea and I was sort of mindlessly eating them. And I know logically it's because of what they put in it, because I say to people, I love bananas, but if you put a great bunch of bananas next to me, I wouldn't eat 6 bananas in one sitting.
No.
Right?
No, you'd probably get 1 or 2 and that's it.
Exactly. But I could eat 6 or 7, probably more, chocolate covered biscuits if I wasn't mindful about it, right? Because 2 is never enough.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say this is the problem, is that we be conditioned from an early age that these types of foods and these types of drinks are beneficial to our health are considered food. But when you start to study it and start to realize, no, it's not. It doesn't sound right. What they're doing to it's changing it completely.
Yeah.
But the problem is we're just not taught that. It's not. I don't blame the public for that. That's the powers to be's fault.
So there's that going on. And the other thing, I don't know if you see this as well, is that we might know that it's not good for us, but then it becomes a treat. So this isn't the same as having a little bit. This is, I'm going to now treat myself to that donut, right? Those are the words that we use. Even that, and people do this with drinking all the time, where they will go out for the evening, and they will just be alcohol free, or maybe they just have the one at the party. Brilliant. They get home, they feel, yep. And do you know what they do? They reward themselves with a drink.
Yep.
So, and I see us do the same thing with food, where again, the way we talk about it is not just that. So even we don't either know what's bad in it, or even if we know, it's like, okay, well, still not, that's going to be my and then we say, it's like my Friday night treat. And then it's every week. And then that becomes a habit. And because I guess of what's contained in it, that drives us to want that thing more and more. It's not a failing in us. It's just the ingredients in there.
Yes. Yeah. So, okay, we sort of got a bit off track. So, so back to the coaching as well. So that, so tell us a little bit about any success stories you've had.
Yeah, so I've had quite a few. I think one of my favorite success stories, just because there's such a nice ribbon, in a bow at the end of it. There was this one client, and he'd was definitely over drinking, recognized it, had been struggling with it for a long, long time. Had been able to go sober a couple of years, but it was like this battle every day. I can't wait, until the 1st of January and I can drink again. And so we completely undid all of that. And one of his goals, his dearest goals, was he wanted to go diving. But he was drinking way too much for it to be safe, right? So not only was it not safe for him to dive, it was not safe for him to do dive training. And furthermore, because of the drinking, he wasn't able to do the swim training he needed in order to qualify to be able to do the dive training, all those things. Anyway, so we worked together, and his consumption came down and down and down and down and down. And he's not totally sober. Even now, he's not totally, and which is fine. That's what he wanted. He's totally in control. And after we stopped working together, I think a couple of months later, he sent me a photo of him on a boat in his wetsuit on a dive trip. Right. And so it's not about, it is about, of course, drinking less, which is sort of how I talk about it, of course, because but it's so much more than that. Right. I had another client, and whenever she went golfing, she would always drink when she was golfing. So it's just, bizarre. We'd have these adult beverages, as what they call. Everybody did it. And even in the morning, I mean, they take then cool, and they wouldn't drink it until 11:30. But she said, and now she does it without that. And her golf, guess what? Her golf has improved. All of these things, right? Because then her life got better because of it. Again, it's what alcohol does is it makes our lives much smaller, much, much smaller, because we don't go out and do the things, even if we're not over drinking. So those are some of my favorite stories when it's people's lives have changed. It's very common for my clients to change jobs as well, because they realize they're capable of more now. Because again, there's again how your life changes, and then there's just the realization that, oh my word, I did this. I actually did this. I just don't overdrink anymore. That's not how I identify, and that in itself is sweeter than anything.
So you were saying that makes it smaller. So
yeah,
I remember. So give us an example of that. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is so just think of my book, right? I started at the top. One of the reasons why it took me 9 long years is all the spare time I had every evening when I had wanted to set aside to do this. If I'd had 2 or 3 drinks with dinner or before dinner, do you know what I would do? I would fall asleep at about 9 in the evening on the sofa for about an hour, and then I'd wake up and have to go to bed. You start to think in terms of, if we're going to go to this event, who's going to drive? Where are we going to stay? Is there going to be enough wine? Everything becomes around that. Right? You can go to a party and all you're thinking is, am I drinking too fast? Is he going to drink that? Is the waiter going to come round? So you're not enjoying what's happening in your life. You're absolutely not present. And again, I stress, this is when you're not drinking from, this is not huge alcohol dependency territory where you're drinking to function. This is just every evening. That's what I mean by that. You just don't do the things.
So it basically shortens your time and your energy levels too. Is that right?
It does that, but it's more. So that story, The Secret Garden. I don't know if you know that story. The lovely story of there's a garden hidden behind. It's a children's story, and there's a gate in the wall, and nobody knows that this garden exists. And there's a locked gate, so they just don't know it's there. And then one day they find this key, and they open up the door, and there's this expansive, overgrown garden. It's like that. Once you unlock the key and you remove the pull that alcohol has on your life, you discover your own secret garden. You discover what you can do with your life. You go off and you want to finish that art project, or you want to do this thing, or you just want to spend more time with your children, or you're just more present. You don't have that when you drink, because you can't, because there's a fog. It's like a fog that goes around you. You just can't see beyond into the fog as to what you could do, because everything comes down to, what am I going to drink? How am I going to feel? And it's
I know that I was watching a podcast, a different type of podcast, and one gentleman, he was an alcoholic. He got away from alcoholism, and then he got down to smoking marijuana only, and because he found that he was too violent on alcohol, but he smoked marijuana because it mellowed him out. It made him more calm. But then he said it was like being in a bubble butt.
Yeah.
You're in this bubble and you just don't want to get out. You don't want to do things.
You don't want to do things.
It's the same with the alcohol.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. I get it. I understand that. I think, it's the same deal. It's no different. And then, of course, then there's other addictions that have different side effects to them. So totally agree. So I can see also that you're an author, and you've talked, given us little snippets of your books. So tell us about your books.
So my first one is called A Thin Line, and that's a historical novel. It's actually based on, I used to live in Amsterdam, and it's based on some real events that happened when it was occupied during World War II. So I've taken something that really, really happened, which was just like, it's just phenomenal daring. It's a good thing that happened, phenomenal daring and courage. And I created a story where you have somebody who finds out what happened in the past, and then it's like, are things always what they seem? That's that thing. As I said, this current one I'm working on for my business is going to be around how it's going to boil down the work I do, how you can drink less without having to stop completely. And again, my third one is historical, and that's completely separate, and I'm keeping that one under wraps right now. But that's to do with That's historical as well. Just put it that way. It's still being fleshed out, and I have to see how it goes. But it's been one I've been doing heaps and heaps and heaps and heaps and heaps of research on. So we'll see.
Yeah, gotcha. So what inspired you to write these books? Well, it's the second one. The second one is sort of answers itself because we sort of already really been talking about. But what about the first one? I know you like. I know you like history.
Yeah, I like history. I like words. It's actually a great question, Dr. Scott, because over those 9 years, I dropped it so many times. When I rewrote it, I mean, maybe 4 times. And I would have this big old desk, huge. I love these old, like 1910 or something, with the big wooden drawers. And I just put it in a drawer and shut the drawer and think, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And then what kept bringing me back was the story, was what these people had done, what these ladies in particular had done. And it just kept drawing me back. And it's like, okay, I was the queen of not finishing things. You probably see this a lot, people where you get this bright, shiny object. And this was the hardest thing. And I remember I got it to about 95% done. And I was like, okay, that's it. It's as good as it's going to get. And my husband said, what? So you haven't finished it? Again, you haven't finished it. And it's like, okay. And I tell you, that last bit, this is the thing you learn as an author, that last bit of actually finishing it, actually then doing the whole publishing thing. And then you put it out in the world and you just want to hide. You just want to hide. But then when you get, and I've sold a few, not, it's not a blockbuster. And that was never the point. The point was always to finish it. And then when you get people reading it who you don't know and commenting on it positively, it's like, oh, okay. And it's just one of the, so it's an achievement. So now these next 2, like this is the one for my business. Draft 1 was done in 3 months. And it's like, okay, yeah, I know how to do this. And that's all part of the competency thing of, so it was always a dream. It took me for years to get there. And now it's much quicker because I'm not worried. I don't have the emotional baggage. I know some people will like it, others will hate it, and it doesn't matter either way.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. So, is there any other projects that you're doing at the moment? Is there any other collaborations you're working with?
No, I think that's it. Apart from, I do a lot of work with, there's a fantastic organization called Moderation Management, and I think it's moderation.org is their website. And they have a very active Facebook group. And again, they are all about helping people to drink less. I mean, it's a similar thing to what I do. And so as one of their experts, I guess I could call myself, I do a lot of work with them. So I just did, they just had a big summit, a virtual summit. So I presented there on accountability, which is a fun topic when it comes to drinking, and how does that work? And I'm going to be presenting again for them. They have another program so I present for them about 2 or 3 times a year. So I'd say that's the main thing that I'm doing there. But otherwise, serving my own clients as well.
Yeah, gotcha. All right, then we'll move on to the last, because you've done well. You've we're into the almost the 50-minute mark, so you've done well. You've talked my shoes off. So, but yeah, thank you so much, Anna. You've given us some gold already. So, tell us, who's your ideal client, or who's your ideal avatar?
Yeah, my ideal client is somebody who is really, they consider themselves as kind of a put together person. They have a decent life. They've got, doesn't, whatever that means for them. And yet they just drink a bit too much. And they know that, well, they don't want to have to go sober. They might want to be it, but they don't sort of want to be, all right, I'm just going to have to go AA and submit, because AA helps a lot of people, but the people I work with, it is a total turn off. That's right. There's things for everybody in life. And they just want to learn. They want control. That's actually the main thing. So you've a put together life, but this bit of your life is just out of control, whatever that means. Whether that means they drink just a couple of glasses too much, or maybe it means you're drinking, a bottle regularly too much. And they don't want to have alcohol be such a cornerstone in their life. Right? They want it, because there's a big difference between having fun and having a drink, or having alcohol to have fun. So that's sort of like I was somebody who's got a decent life, just wants to get this sorted, and is ready to do it. Right? Because it's simple. It's really simple, but there is work involved in doing this. And sort of just to be ready to do that, and to believe. I mean, this is the thing, people might not believe. So anyone listening to this, they might think that sounds really great, but it's not for me. And I think we have to have an element of, even if it's a tiny, weeny little bit, we want to believe that it's possible for us.
That's awesome. And all right, we'll go into my last question. So what ideas, you've sort of already given us some. So what ideas or methods would you use to implement to sustain lifelong longevity?
Well, it's interesting we talked quite a bit about food as well. And it reminds me, my husband the other day, about 2 months ago, sent me this article that was in the newspaper. So, alert. And it was about this family in Italy that all of them were over 100 years old. And they attributed this to this particular dish that they'd eaten every day for lunch for years. So, of course, I get the recipe and I make it. It's this beans thing. It's actually really delicious. So I would say eat healthily, in the sense of I will 9 times out of 10 cook from first principles. Right. So it's interesting you're talking about processed food. I mean, I cook. We eat a lot of salad these days because I get time back that way. But cook from first principles. Move. It's very important to move. If I don't move, as I get older, I get kind of a bit, creakier. And of course, moderate your alcohol consumption. I mean, I'm not going to get into, there are studies that a glass of red wine is healthy or not, and all the rest of it. I just think, just do it in a bit of moderation. And if you've got a mindset around drinking that it's not a necessary part of your enjoyment, you're going to be successful at doing that. And I don't see there's anything wrong with a glass or two. I have no judgment on that. So yeah, that's what I'm working with. And laugh as well, I guess, right? Need to laugh.
Yeah, that's for sure. So that's pretty good, Anna. That's some very good answers there. And so thank you so much for your time. And if you could put your details in the chat as well. I got it on my 3 platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And if you could put your details in there so people could get access to you. And if they want to ask more questions about their affliction.
Yeah.
And kick that affliction.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Anna. Thanks for your time and much appreciated. And you've been watching the Get Busy Livin podcast with the lovely Anna Charles. And I'm Dr. Scott from Sixth Sense Acupuncture and the Healthy Habits Club. And you guys, you have a great night. Thank you very much. See ya.